So what? Today, we are going to explain the second episode of the Korean drama Goblin. Go to the description to watch the first episode. Goblin is a human being centuries ago. He became a goblin as a gift from God and as a punishment. If his bride pulls the sword in his chest, he can rest in peace. According to the ghosts, June Tuck is the bride of the goblin. She is a child who was about to die in her mother's womb. One day, when she was blowing out the candles on her birthday cake, Goblin appears to her. But Goblin does not believe that June Tuck is his bride, because June Tuck cannot see the sword in his chest. One day, June Tuck goes to Canada with Goblin through a door. That is why Goblin is suspicious. It becomes clear that this is the real bride. Meanwhile, Grim Reaper is looking for information about June Tuck. Is June Tuck someone who should not live? Will the Grim Reaper find her? Is June Tuck really the Goblin's bride? Then why can't she see the sword? To find out all this, you have to watch the drama until the end. So let's jump into the drama. The Goblin opens the door of the library and goes to Canada, saying that June Tuck is not Goblin's bride. But what is surprising is that June Tuck follows Goblin to Canada through that same door. When she finds out that she is in Canada, June Tuck is surprised by Goblin's ability and immediately tells him that she loves Goblin. Goblin is also surprised that June Tuck came to Canada. June Tuck takes him everywhere there. She goes to shopping malls, restaurants, everywhere. Goblin is now feeling crazy because of June Tuck's crazy walking. June Tuck is very happy. She goes to a shop with Christmas decorations and gives Goblin her phone to take a photo. Goblin takes the photo right away without even looking. While the two are walking in a park full of maple trees, she sees a maple falling from a tree. She tries to catch a leaf, but before that, the Goblin reaches out and catches a maple leaf. June Tuck tells him to quickly throw the maple leaf away, because if you catch a maple leaf that falls from a tree, the person who catches the leaf will fall in love with the person who was there at that time. The Goblin thinks that it is a story that June Tuck made up. At that time, June Tuck says that I was going to catch the maple leaf with that handsome Canadian boy. She takes the maple leaf from the Goblin and runs to talk to a handsome Canadian boy there. But as soon as she leaves, she gets scared and runs back saying that the person is a Canadian ghost. The Goblin takes June Tuck to a luxury hotel. June Tuck says, "It's not right to bring a high school kid to a place like this." At that time, the Goblin jokingly says, "Why did you say earlier that you were going to marry me?" He left June Tuck in the lobby and said he would be back in a while. Again, back in Seoul, the Grim Reaper meets another Grim Reaper. He is a junior to Grim Reaper. That's why we'll call him Junior Reaper. This Junior Reaper gives him a file of a missing person. Grim Reaper's case is a bit serious because the name of the missing person is not on the living list or the death list. He is talking about June Tuck, because June Tuck was about to die in her mother's womb. At that time, she didn't have a name. That's why Grim Reaper has to do a lot of paperwork. These Grim Reapers have to pay rent for a house and food. They live like ordinary people. Junior Reaper complains that this is unfair. At the same time, a woman comes to the restaurant and scolds a man, saying that he tried to hit her and ran away. Grim Reaper puts on his hat and goes to work. Grim Reaper gets invisible power when he puts on this black hat. He tells the couple that they just died in a car accident. He takes these two souls to the tea shop. Reaper gives the woman tea to drink, but does not give the man, because he should remember all the bad things he has done. This is not the first time he had an accident. This is the same man who hit June Tuck's mother and ran away years ago. He begs to Reaper, but Reaper has nothing to do with it. Everything is in God's hands. Grim Reaper says that he knows someone who remembers everything he did in his previous life and living in a hell. He says that he has apologized 100,000 times, but it still hasn't worked. He is none other than Goblin. The Goblin is in a cemetery in Canada. It is the burial ground of the Goblin's servant, Yu family. For centuries, the Goblin has witnessed the deaths of all of them. The Goblin thinks that this life of his is a gift, but this is God's punishment. Let's go back to the past. That day, the little boy who came from Goryeo on a ship was saved by the Goblin. He has been with the Goblin since he was a young man and an adult. The Goblin had tried to pull out the sword from his chest from time to time, but he couldn't remove it. Among these graves, there is also a nameless grave with a goblin's face. Juntuck comes to the goblins at this time. She sees the goblin's nameless grave. She greets the grave and says that after 200 years, I will be your bride. But the goblin does not accept it. The goblin has settled here together after leaving his village. The hotel she went to before also belongs to the goblin. At the same time, Juntuck gets worried when the goblin reminds her that she is late for school. They leave to Seoul again. At school, the teacher treats Juntuck very badly and evilly because Juntuck is poor, but she studies well. That's why the teacher is jealous. At the bus stop at night, Juntuck puts the maple leaf she got inside a guidebook she bought from Canada. She remembers Goblin. She is listening to the radio. The DJ says that when you look at a memory you like the most, the person you immediately remember is yours one. When Goblin comes home, he talks to the Grim Reaper about a problem between life and death. Grim Reaper warns him, if what Goblin is going to say is not important, otherwise he is dead. Then he follows the Goblin. Goblin opens the door in front of him and goes to the cornflower field. Opening the same door, the Grim Reaper comes to the front of the house and looks for Goblin. Goblin wants to know if there are others like Juntuck. Can people come like that? Goblin opens the front door again and approaches Grim Reaper. Grim Reaper is surprised by this. Grim Reaper can't really open doors like Goblin does. Grim Reaper is curious about this. That's why he hangs behind Goblin. Meanwhile, when Duckwa comes and goes to shake Grim Reaper's hand, he moves away without shaking Duckwa's hand. Duckwa calls Grim Reaper as last room uncle. He asks Reaper not to let Grandpa know that he rented the house. Thinking of going to Canada again, Juntuck opens a door, but she goes to a washroom. There is that young lady who is Grandma there. Let's call her Fairy Godmother, because she always comes for Juntucks. Juntuck doesn't recognize her, but the godmother gives her a bunch of spinach leaves and tells her to share them with the family. When she gets home, there is nothing to eat in the fridge. She makes food with those spinach leaves. Her aunt's daughter finds the Canada guidebook in Juntuck's bag. Juntuck's aunt tells her that she is planning to travel abroad with her mother's insurance money. At that time, the aunt's daughter cuts her own finger. Her son also chokes while eating. When the aunt approaches them, Juntuck takes the guidebook and food and leaves the house. She cries alone. Meanwhile, Goblin lies in bed and thinks about Juntuck. He thinks why Juntuck can go through doors with him but can't see the sword. Goblin now starts thinking about Juntuck. He now wants to know if Juntuck is his bride. Goblin goes to street where near Juntuck's house. He says that he didn't come because he wanted to, but because Juntuck reminded him. In fact, Goblin can't come even after reminding him like that. He asks Juntuck, "It is late. Why are you on the road?" Juntuck wants to go inside the house after her aunts go to sleep. A classmate of hers sees the two of them and goes to take a photo. Then, the car door slams and knocks her down. She runs away in fear when she sees that there is no driver in the car. The next day, Juntuck goes to a chicken shop looking for a job. The owner is a beautiful woman named Sunny. She is a bit strange. However, she gives Juntuck the job. Juntuck is jumping up and down with joy. However, Sunny says that she can't remember a time when a customer came to her shop. Juntuck reminds Goblin happily while holding her name tag. But since Goblin doesn't come, she lights a match and blows. Goblin appears from behind, but he was eating at that time. He scolds Juntuck for talking without an appointment. At that time, Juntuck tells Goblin very cutely that she loves Goblin. Goblin disappears from there. When Goblin goes to his room like crazy, Grim Reaper watches him and thinks he is crazy. When the Reaper goes to sleep at night, Goblin breaks into the room and he asks if the clothes he is wearing are good. In this way, he changes his clothes and the things he is holding in his hands, like a modeling show, and asks the Reaper if they are good. The Reaper is now fed up, but the Goblin wants to look decent when Juntuck brings him. Finally, the Goblin removes the Grim Reaper's white bedsheet and sees the Reaper sleeping with his hands holding like a dead person in a coffin. Goblin jokes the room is like a morgue. The Reaper wails and asks him to let him sleep in peace. The next day, when he wakes up, the Goblin has put a red blanket on him and has put a granny hat on his head. Grim Reaper, who came to iron the clothes out of anger, takes one of the Goblin's underwear and pulls it out. The Goblin screams angrily. there is a breaking news that a lightning storm is suddenly falling on the town. This happens when the goblin is angry and sad. Dokwa comes screaming into the goblin's room. At that time, the goblin is about to tell Dokwa that he is a goblin. However, Dokwa has known about it since he was a child. Because the goblin has been acting strangely for some days, Dokwa has become suspicious. The goblin scolds him while floating, saying that even that he knows he is a goblin, Dokwa does not speak to him with respect. Now, Ji-yoon Tuk works at a chicken shop. The owner of the shop, Sunny, is waiting for someone to come. She treats Ji-yoon Tuk kindly. She says that the employee should not work when the owner is not there. Sunny goes to a fortune teller. She says that Sunny is an orphan with no luck. Sunny wants to know if she will find a boyfriend. The fortune teller says to be careful of anyone wearing black clothes and wearing a black hat. Sunny thinks as long as he is beautiful, it doesn't matter who it is. Meanwhile, Grim Reaper goes to get his hat dry cleaned. Goblin jokes with Grim Reaper about the hat. Grim Reaper gets fed up and leaves. However, the goblin is impatient and says that Ji-yoon Tuk will talk anytime. Ji-yoon Tuk is laminating maple leaves with her friend at school and telling she will give it as a gift to Goblin for finding her a job. Ji-yoon Tuk blows out a match that night. However, Grim Reaper comes there. Ji-yoon Tuk sees Reaper and tries to avoid him, but the Reaper comes in front of her. He has found Ji-yoon Tuk after 10 years. According to him, even though Ji-yoon Tuk's name is not on the living list or the death list, it is on the missing list. That's why he can take Ji-yoon Tuk now. Then, the goblin comes there. Ji-yoon Tuk quickly closes the goblin's eyes and tells him not to look at the Grim Reaper's eyes. Goblin talks to the Reaper in his mind. The two can talk to each other in their minds. Goblin warns, no one can't look down on a goblin. Ji-yoon Tuk tries to drag the goblin away. At that time, the goblin says that Ji-yoon Tuk is the goblin's bride, so a Reaper cannot take his bride away in front of the goblin. At that time, Ji-yoon Tuk realizes that this is the real goblin. Grim Reaper disappears from there. However, the goblin tells Ji-yoon Tuk that she cannot be the bride, because she doesn't see anything special about the goblin. And he also says not to have false hopes because he is leaving here soon. Ji-yoon Tuk says she doesn't want to be a bride either and leaves. When she looks back, the goblin has disappeared. When he gets home, the Reaper asks the goblin, "Are you going to die?" Because when he finds a bride, she can pull his sword. The goblin says that Ji-yoon Tuk still can't see the sword. The next day, Ji-yoon Tuk goes to the library and reads fairy tales about Goblin. But Ji-yoon Tuk, remembering the goblin, leaves Maple Leaf in a book and gets up angrily. At the same time, someone takes the book. Meanwhile, the goblin's entire living room is filled with smoke. Just as the Grim Reaper is about to approach the goblin, lightning strikes and flames come out of the goblin's body. Dokwa says that he doesn't want it to rain. The Reaper suspects Goblin is sad because of a girl.
The two of them curse each other in front of Dokwa, calling each other names. It's at this point that Dokwa realizes that the Grim Reaper is not an ordinary man. After a while, Grim Reaper and Goblin leave the house at the same time. Reaper goes to Ji-yoon Tuk's house. Goblin also goes there. But Ji-yoon Tuk is not home at that time. The two argue again. Finally, Reaper begs him to tell him where Ji-yoon Tuk is. Ji-yoon Tuk stays at the chicken shop that night. She immediately goes looking for the young ghost who scared her. There are many ghosts. A ghost grandmother tells Ji-yoon Tuk it was the goblin who saved Ji-yoon Tuk and her mother from the car accident. Ji-yoon Tuk loses her anger for the goblin. Goblin watches her talk to the ghosts. Meanwhile, Ji-yoon Tuk's aunt comes to the chicken shop. She meets Sunny and yells at her for hiring Ji-yoon Tuk. Sunny makes a fake call as if she's talking to a thug and scares the aunt away. The loan sharks come after the aunt. When they're about to take her away, she tells them Ji-yoon Tuk's mother saved a large amount of money, as if she knew she was going to die. Now Ji-yoon Tuk has that bank book. The loan sharks pick up Ji-yoon Tuk when she gets home from school. Meanwhile, Goblin and Grim Reaper are fighting again, throwing things on both sides of the long table. Meanwhile, the loan sharks are pulling Ji-yoon Tuk's things and looking for her bank book. When one of them lights a lighter, Juntak comes in front of the car to blow it out, and the car moves back and forth. Just as a loan shark is about to hit Juntak, the birthmark on Juntak's neck flashes. Both Goblin and Reaper, who are fighting, feel this. Loan Shark stops the car suddenly, because the streetlights are going out all along. Then Goblin and Grim Reaper walk towards the car to save Juntak through the darkness. This is how the second episode of the Goblin drama ends. Will the Grim Reaper help Goblin to save Juntak? Or will he take Juntak back to death? Is Juntak the real bride of Goblin? How long will the god punish Goblin? Isn't Juntak someone who deserves to live? So, see you in the next episode.